77 of TGW. I am joined once again by Steve and also Wendell from Level 1 Tech. Steve from Gamers Nexus. What is going on, guys?
How's it going?
Hello.
Not much. Thanks thanks for joining us. I wanted to bring everyone together here. I've had Wendell on recently. I think he's been on a couple times. Steve's been on a couple times. I was like, we need to bring all of these minds together and have a clash of the tech titans.
Hopefully minimal clashing involved.
Hopefully, yeah, it should be pretty good though. I actually took last week off for TGW unintentionally. I was traveling. I was down in South Carolina for Thanksgiving, and I brought along my whole road setup. I brought my laptop and everything.
Man,
as I'm unpacking my gear, my microphone rolls off the kitchen table and lands right on the end. I'm just like, oh, it's. I'm sure it's fine. And I plugged it in, and it's just. It's like, oh.
No.
It's like, well, it's the first time I ever missed an episode of TGW. First week off ever.
you have an excuse. You just say it was Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's like, I was supposed to do that, and I had also had a promise to some company for doing a Black Friday video, so I didn't get to do that either because I was going to film that while I was there. I was going to go I had to do car tech. I was going to go park the car with like a nice view and get shots of all the gear and everything, and I couldn't do that either. So
right.
It all fell apart at the seams, so I ended up taking a week vacation. So, how was your guys' Thanksgiving week, though? Did you do anything good?
I rebuilt our web server.
Is that the Linux one you were talking about?
Yeah, that's the pain in the ass. Yeah. Yeah, I was basically found out on Tuesday or Wednesday before Thanksgiving that we were going down every 4 to 12 hours sporadically. And it was just because we were on an old version of Linux, and the host updated it without telling me. So spent the next few days completely rebuilding the whole thing from the ground up. But it works now.
How about you, Wendell? How was your holiday week?
It was good. Filled with work. I too was updating things and deploying things and God knows what else. But it's good. It's all good.
Yeah, I had a really long drive. That was the longest drive I've ever done. It was down to South Carolina. It was like 12 hours there and back. The way back was way worse, though. Everyone had the same idea, it seemed, to travel on Sunday. And Google Maps kept on taking us off 95 to get around the traffic. But then the back roads we would be on were also jammed with traffic, and you could see all the out-of-state license plates. And like, oh, they're all following Google Maps. All right, so if you guys, I don't know if you guys want to go ahead and plug your stuff. We want to start off with Wendell, and also I got up your giveaway too. If you want to tell people about that with your tech pickup.
Yeah, I've got this thing, which is garbage.
The garbage build.
Yes, this is an i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and a GTX 750. But we did a video on. Look, you can upgrade. Like these things are basically 5 years old, so they're coming off lease or they're being retired by companies and things like that. So you can't get these on eBay, but you can get these from a lot of the time your local recycling center or local businesses or local university or whatever. Like if you've got a hospital or a big company, and you call them, you say, "What do you do with your surplus equipment?" or "What do you do with your retired equipment?" They'll usually give you the name of another company, or they'll say, "Oh, we have an auction," or whatever. And so we picked up several of these. We're giving this one away. There's a Gleam link, and so it's a perfectly reasonable gaming machine, even though it's 5 years old. And if you get you put a 1050 or a 1050 Ti in a machine like this, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can pick one of those up on the cheap, for college, whatever, or if you just want to play some CSGO or Overwatch, it'll be fine.
Let me point out the CPU cooler on there. Wendell, if you hold that up again, is that CPU cooler got a plastic shroud around it, and then that connects to a green funnel, right, on the side panel?
No, this is the small form factor, so the side just goes on, and there's a vent, so
right.
It's designed to duct air from the outside over the CPU. It's kind of weird.
It's definitely. And what'd you pay for the whole system, everything all together?
We got 3 similar systems for $75, but we've got 2 extra CPUs and some extra RAM. But the 3 systems that we picked one that had an SSD and one that had 8 gigs of RAM, and so we were like, let's just combine it all. So we literally have got $75 in this thing.
Wow, that's not bad at all. So there you go. If you're on a budget, you can still get a good piece, a decent PC. maybe not a great PC, but
the SSD is a little on the small side.
it's still a hell of a lot cheaper than a console, and it's more CPU power than a console. You were saying, right?
Yeah, it's with a 1050 Ti, a machine like you'd have to buy a 1050 Ti, but a 1050 Ti is about 3.1 gigaflops, and I think the PS4 is like 2.9 or something like that. So yeah, it's just in terms of gigaflops, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, the important thing is just staying on the low ends for the power output for the GPU, so that you can power it through the PCI slot. But what about you, Steve? You got any tech pickups you want to show off?
So like, I don't have anything super usable for an enthusiast class system or anything. I bought these really sweet thermocouples though, so I was excited about those. I think last week or 2 weeks ago when we did that like final, this is the end all EVGA VRM coverage.
The one with Buildzoid?
Yeah, so he joined for a bit. There were two videos. One was like an extended, but basically these will they're adhesive and they stick to the back, in our case, to the back of the PCB and to directly to the MOSFETs and the power stages. And the concerns, there's a lot of concerns with any normal thermocouple, but these are cool because they don't really interrupt the heat exchange from the FET casing to the thermal pads that much. So that was a major test concern we had. And then electrical conductivity was a concern too, and so was EMI. But we're able to work through all of it with this stuff. So really excited about those. There's like $100 for 5, which is absurd for thermocouples, but got the job done.
There you go. For me, I picked this up down while I was in South Carolina. Grab it here. We went through a flea market, and this flea market was filled with like retro gaming and stuff. And I saw a few vendors had PlayStation 1s. This guy had a PS1 that was looking really clean. It came with one of the controllers, not the it doesn't have the analog stick, so it's not the DualShock. That was like the only downside of it. But he only wanted $8 for the system, and then he had games priced at $3 a piece, and I ended up getting the entire thing all together for $10. So the PlayStation 1, all the connections, everything, and the controller for $10.
That's pretty good.
Just pretty damn good.
And the games I got the original Grand Theft Auto, I got Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, classic, and WCW versus the World. So I've been playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. The only thing I need to do now is get a memory card and maybe a controller with analog sticks so I can play a little better.
Best soundtrack in those games too.
Oh, that's what I was saying. I was playing it last night with my brother, and like it was just kicking out some really good like '90s jams. I was like, man, I'm like back in intermediate school again. Like, let's rock out.
Yeah, there's like Rage Against the Machine, AFI, Adolescence. Yeah, it's a great soundtrack.
Papa Roach. Yep.
Papa Roach. Yeah.
I don't know if I would call him great, but yeah, he's in there.
Yeah.
He's okay. Okay, so that's our tech pickups. If you guys want to check out Steve or Wendell, the links to their YouTube channels are going to be down in the description below, as well as the Gleam link for Wendell's giveaway for the garbage PC there.
Nice.
That's not my wording. That's his.
It was definitely destined for the landfill, but I saved it.
He saved it, and it could be yours for the price of a Gleam click. There you go. It could all be yours. All right, so we're going to get into our first topic here. We've been talking a lot. I think I've talked with Kaby Lake with both of you guys in previous episodes, but it looks like now it's finally hitting the desktop. We've got some benchmarks started rolling in across the web yesterday, and it's looking pretty good. It's not like blowing the old CPUs out of the water, Skylake, as far as gaming performance is concerned. Seeing some pretty minimal gains here. Metro Last Light gained about 5 FPS. It's pretty typical for what we see in the upgrades in these processors, at least for the gaming use. Ash of the Singularity gained a little bit more, but that's kind of CPU bound, so you'd expect that. But on the actual, usage, like what were you talking about earlier, Steve, with the how much faster it was?
Yeah, I was talking about
on the renders,
CLI encoding. So on our render machine back there, we run. I've got my system's very unhappy. I don't know if you can hear that, but we've got a Handbrake encode process that just runs every night, and it compresses all of our video files. That takes a lot of time. So we were seeing in Tom's testing anyway, we're seeing like a 4-minute reduction off the base 6700K for their 40-minute test. So that's pretty good. I mean,
4 minutes is huge.
Yeah, like over the period of 4 hours or something, that's an extra compression pass we can do that we normally wouldn't be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So for something like that, pretty big deal. For gaming, don't upgrade if you're on Skylake, I guess. But
yeah, certainly. Yeah, if you're on Skylake, but maybe if you're on older Ivy Bridge or Sandy Bridge, yeah, and especially if you're on an i5. But I would still say if you're on an i5 and you're looking to upgrade, I really wouldn't do it unless you're going for an i7. That's, I don't know. I wouldn't really go for an i5. It's one of the newer i5s personally.
Yeah, not unless it's several generations, maybe. Depends on
Yes.
what you're doing. Like this is basically like what we're seeing with Kaby Lake is kind of the nail in the coffin for TikTok, which Intel's been saying for years is on the way out. So
Yeah.
this is the optimization step. So it's still the same process. 14 nanometer fin density is the same. Everything's the same. Second generation tri-gates. It's all the same. It's just a little bit better.
Yeah, now I see these they've been benchmarking these, but are these actually available yet to buy? Because usually they go up like pretty much the same day, but I couldn't find them on Newegg earlier.
Not yet, no. This one is a Tom's hardware preview, and they say they received it from an unnamed source, and Intel wouldn't comment. So.
Was that the story behind it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had originally got here going through several layers of websites that were posting these numbers around and like just saying these are numbers, and then you have to find the one word of text that's in blue on WCCF Tech to find out where it came from.
Well, the Kaby Lake stuff from like laptops.
Yeah.
All the gains have been around just clock speed. It's not even like an IPC gain. It's just that it's 200 megahertz faster, or the cache is a little bit faster, or whatever.
Yeah, well, then they also got the speed shift stuff in here, which I'm pretty excited to see how that's all going to play out, given this, all that stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm saying. Words.
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to look at. I think there's expanded AVX support, but I'm not really sure. I still have to read about the architecture for Kaby Lake.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to AMD Zen. I think this is maybe just a little bit more exciting news. There was rumors originally circulating that we were going to see an announcement, sort of like a showcase event on December 13th. I guess we're going to see maybe some gaming performance, because they were talking about esports and Evil Genius's PPD will put it through its paces. That's what they're saying on here, quoting that over on DSOG. So maybe we'll actually get to see some gaming performance. And we'd already seen them testing this up against the 6900K. A little while back. So do you think we'll finally get to see it sort of spread its wings here and really get out there and run on the 13th?
We'll see. Esports is not don't tend to be very intensive titles, but we'll see what it looks like, I guess. I don't even know what EG plays these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll do some Overwatch or something. I'm mostly excited to see how these are going to perform for, like video rendering and things, and seeing if I can get, match like 6800 or 6900K performance for the price that they're talking about, for around like $300 on some of these processors. They already started the countdown over on the AMD website, so now it's official that this is going to be happening in 12 days, 22 hours. You can register on there to sign up for the live stream if you want. So they'll be streaming this, out to everyone, to the general public, if you want to check it out. Links are down in the description below to all of this.
Yeah, we'll have more information around that time. Then, as usual, AMD, I'm fairly certain will be at CES. They pretty much there every year, so definitely expect more info then if we don't have it before then.
Yeah, that's probably when we'll expect to see the official release, probably around the time of CES.
Yeah, within a few weeks, I would think, if we're lucky. We'll see.
Yeah. We've also along with this, we had gotten, this was a rumor like about a week ago, and still people are still kind of talking about it, having the different tiers on the processors, going from the low end to the high end. SR3, SR5, and SR7 is what they were codenamed, and talking about around $290 for the high end there for the 8-core 16 threaded part, which they had showed competing with the likes of the 6900K. So if you could see that for $300, then that's something I would definitely jump all over.
I'm curious about Wendell. What do you think of the rumored name? Let's just pretend for a minute that this is true, right? With Summit Ridge, that they're going to name it SR3, 5, and 7 parts. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like with the obvious mirror to Intel's?
Yeah, I would say that it would be smart of AMD to name their parts with something that people could kind of say is like, oh, that's kind of a parody with whatever, because they didn't do themselves any favors with like the 8350 or the 9350 or any of that sort of naming convention.
8370, 8320.
Yeah, I'd say that they're going to have at least a couple of different clock speeds though too. So I'd say that they'll probably have a lesser expensive SR7 and a more expensive SR7. It's hard for me to imagine AMD having more than a total of like 6 or 8 desktop parts overall. But the thing from this announcement that actually made me more worried is, you guys remember when they did the demo of the 67 or the 6900K, they had turned off turbo boost on the 6900K. And so it's like, okay, this is a pre-release chip. They're working on their clock speed, whatever. But they didn't really disclose. At least I don't recall that they disclosed what the clock speed was of that Zen chip. And so this article,
it was 3 gigahertz, wasn't it? I think they were both matched at 3 gigahertz.
Was it?
I believe I think that's what they were trying to pass it off as, maybe.
I think that they were saying, yeah, but I think they were saying that the chip is locked. The Intel chip is locked at 3 gigahertz, but I don't think they clearly said what their clock speed was. If it was 3 and 3, that's great, that's amazing. But I don't think that's the case. I think what's going to happen is their part's going to come out and it's going to be like 3.8 gigahertz versus 3 gigahertz or 3.2 gigahertz or something. Right. And if that's the case, even this 4.2 that was quoted in this article, that might be not enough. Even though Intel doesn't have a clock speed on a high core count to match that, except in the Xeon family.
Right.
Yeah, I was only able to take my 6800K up to 4.3 gigahertz, and I saw that, echoed by a lot of other tech people out there that had tested it. If you go over that, and start pushing the voltage a little bit more, you just start seeing insane temperatures that wasn't really worth it.
Yeah.
To push it that far.
Yeah. In terms of like Handbrake, you would benefit with that, but in terms of like regular desktop applications, for us, the 68, and I didn't test a lot of chips, but I bought several chips at retail, and the 6800K and the 6850K, by and large, 4.4, 4.5 wasn't too much of a problem, especially if I had an all-in-one closed-loop cooler. And I would, that was better for us than the 8-core and 10-core parts in terms of overclockability and in terms of thermal stability and just overall system stability.
Yeah, so the chat seems pretty adamant that it was a 3 gigahertz to 3 gigahertz matchup.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
so,
I had thought that it was too, but it wouldn't surprise me if they had worded it in a way that like they wanted you to think that. That wouldn't surprise me either if we went back and watched it now. Just like, well, they didn't actually say that, did they? They just kind of made it look that it could really go either way. But I'd have to go back and watch it again.
If that's the case, and there's the SR7 that can hit a 4.2, AMD is going to mop the floor with Intel. Especially
for the price to performance, without a doubt. Because the 1600s are those are 1,000 or are those under 1,000?
Yeah, the 8 cores is 1,000 and 10 cores is 1,700.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really where it's going to matter the most, is the price, I think, because performance, even at parity, AMD tends to at least be a little bit ahead in price. So we'll see how it plays out. The rumors do, like you were saying, Joker, do all pretty much point to reasonably affordable chips, though.
Yeah, and they're saying on this article, they're saying it should be able to hit 4.2 gigahertz comfortably on air or a water cooler with just a somewhat standard overclock. We'll have to test the validity of that, obviously. And they're saying 5 gigahertz on liquid nitrogen, but that's on liquid nitrogen.
That's a silly metric. I don't know why that was included.
Because everyone has liquid nitrogen.
You probably hit 5 gigahertz on quite a few processors with liquid nitrogen.
You could probably go past 5 gigahertz on liquid nitrogen with a lot of processors.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the numbers, though, are all interesting. Like the 3 to 4 gigahertz range is the most realistic, at least for the baselines.
I would be okay with 4.2 gigahertz. If the processors are fast enough. I'm eyeing up the 8 cores and the 16 threads mainly. And if they're able to match what Intel is doing, even if maybe on like the 6850K, not necessarily their full 6900K, even if they're getting close to that, it would still be a compelling option to pick it up and try it out for for the type of workload that we would use in running YouTube channels, rendering videos.
Very difficult work. Yeah,
it is rendering. I got to sit there for sometimes minutes waiting for videos to render. I need to shave 30 seconds off of that time.
Yeah, we actually did run into a problem with. I've kind of dropped it for now, but we were using Warp Stabilizer in Premiere for B-roll clips on Rails, and it's neat, but man, it takes a long time to render that with color correction and stuff.
Yeah,
It's
I've done some stabilizations. I use Sony Vegas. I'm a peasant,
right.
but I've done some stabilization stuff on there before, and it really takes a long time. That and also putting on like a Gaussian blur. If you put
Yeah.
that on something, it's just like it'll be going through the render perfectly fine, and then it'll get up to that spot, and it'll just like halt, and like take an extra hour just for that few minutes or whatever that you have that part on.
Yeah, and CUDA acceleration and OpenCL acceleration kind of do put it more on the GPU a lot of the time, but I still see really high CPU utilization when we're rendering stuff, even though most of it's on the GPU.
Adobe is awful at like scaling. Like seriously, like it's like I've got 37 cores and Adobe's like
they don't care.
Hey, whatever.
We'll use 6. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll use 6 badly. We'll use 8, and it'll be slower than when we're using 4.
I've heard about that. That's one of the reasons I didn't jump off and buy like a dual Xeon rig to go ahead and use Adobe with it.
That would be such bad. Like you would not get your money back on that.
It's the 2670s. If you disable 2 of the cores, like 2 of the cores in BIOS, and then rerun Adobe benchmarks, it actually does better. Because the turbo will like you got 4 cores enabled or 2 cores out of the 6 enabled, it'll clock up to 3.3.
Right.
And so then the Adobe suite runs really great because you got all that cache memory, and a couple of cores. The Adobe suite runs like greased lightning, but all the cores, it's like let me use all these cores badly.
So if you do that with like the dual 2670 versus like an i7 X99 processor, who's going to win out on Adobe render times?
They're both. I mean, they're both not going to be great. Sadly, Skylake is going to win. Like especially if you get Skylake to 4.5 gigahertz, 4 cores, it's going to win.
Yeah, I've heard that. I remember seeing. I think it was Dimitri. He did his build with a quad core Skylake, and I was just like, why is he doing a quad core?
Because Adobe's awful.
Better.
Just awful.
It's like, why is he doing a quad core? Get an X99, man. It's like, no, don't.
Yeah.
Now, if you install like the Q1 2015 version of Premiere, there's a render multiple frames checkbox, and if you do that, the 2670 will mop the floor with all of that. But that option's not there anymore.
Gunhead said YouTube editor for the win. someone had messaged me about that actually the other day. His girlfriend was trying to edit a video for his company's website, and they were like asking me like all these editing questions, and I was just like, "What program are you guys using?" They're like, "The editor on YouTube," and I was just like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Here's a RAR file. Just delete it when you're done." All right, so continuing to talk with CPUs, this actually kind of struck my interest after seeing some of the Watchdog benchmarks go up with the CPUs and seeing how much that was being utilized in that game. On my 6800K, I was regularly seeing that around 60 to 65% usage. So the open world games usually do hit the CPU pretty hard, but I thought it would kind of open up an interesting discussion on CPU bottlenecks and how we're seeing that in some modern titles now. Usually like most like just linear like single player stuff, like maybe like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, you're probably not going to see it as much, unless you're talking about maybe like lower resolutions with a much higher end GPU and you're being limited on the amount of frames it can actually deliver. But with something like Battlefield 1, like you tested recently, Steve, you see it a little bit more, right?
It's a lot of these games are more relying on the clock speed than the core count and things like that too. Mm-hmm. So you can take, just like we were saying with Premiere a moment ago, you take a CPU and push the clock rate up and really do not bad. That's why with like in our benchmarks 5930K, well, part of the reason it's performing about the same as the 6700K. And if you overclock the 6700K, it just blows away the 5930K every day. So yeah, there's more CPU bottlenecking popping up, where I guess it's really limiting higher end GPUs if you have one. And obviously, like the point of these benchmarks, you always pair as high end components as possible with only one variable, which in this case is the CPU. So not always a realistic scenario when we, for example, benchmark an X4 845 with a 1080, but it shows us the scaling. And in this case, it was not favorable for the X4 845 with Battlefield 1.
In that first graph, what GPU is that, or is that an aggregate of multiple GPUs?
Is this the scaling with only the blue lines?
No, the blue, red, and orange, the first graph on page 2.
Very first one is a DirectX 11 benchmark, and that is with a GTX 1080 FTW hybrid, I believe.
Okay.
From memory. And yeah, a lot of the limitations here. So core count is some of it. If you play like GTA 5 is a really good example. If you take a G3 258 Intel CPU and you benchmark it there, the averages will actually look pretty good. They'll look better than a lot of the X4 CPUs. Like at the time it was relevant, the X4 760K. Averages look great. But when you look at the low percentage, like the percentile performance is 1%, 0.1%, it's awful. And that's because that's basically, you see that take effect in stutters, where the screen starts a render, basically drawing a frame to the screen, and you end up with a bunch of runt frames, and to the user that's perceived as stuttering. And so that's normally, in the case of GTA 5 with 3258, is a single thread or dual thread, depending on which CPU you use, limitation versus something like a quad core. But not all games are really quad core ready yet. A lot of them, like Battlefield 1, do care a lot more about the frequency than, for example, having hyper-threaded quad core. So it just lands on the developers for optimization. DirectX 12, as you can see in those charts, is really not great either. So DX12 is not the savior in this game that you would hope for.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think DX12 is a savior of much of anything yet.
Not yet.
Until we start seeing it in more engines getting utilized from the beginning, kind of like Gears 4.
Yeah, well, all that load is AMD, Intel, NVIDIA. They have decades of experience optimizing drivers for APIs that are not low level, and now we're taking that and saying, let's remove some abstraction layers. So now it's like GPU, compiler, game. That's putting a lot of effort into all that effort is shifted to the development houses, and they don't necessarily know what they're doing yet.
Yeah, and you can start to see the age looking at this. Have to see how far you have to go down the list to get to the first AMD processor in the FX 8370. You can really start to see those falling behind to the point it's really not worth recommending those to anyone anymore unless you could find one like really dirt cheap. If you're already running an 8370, then it's a good way to look at it to kind of see how much performance you would actually gain if you did upgrade. If you're like, should I upgrade my 8370?
Right.
The answer is yes, you should.
Well, at this point,
especially if you're playing Battlefield 1.
Yeah, at this point, I am not recommending AM3 Plus builds anyway because, one, if you really want AMD, Zen is theoretically right around the corner.
Exactly.
And two, that platform is ancient. It's like a 2011 chipset. To get it updated to a modern spec, they've got to put all kinds of extra controllers on the boards, and they don't always work great together. But
yeah, I've seen a lot of one of my buddies had picked up like one of the MSI boards along with an FX 8320 like about a year and a half ago, and he just had nothing but issues with that board. And they kept going back and forth with them and everything. I don't know what the end issue was with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the controllers, because a bunch of people had to RMA those boards for the same reasons, where they just would not boot when they would have certain devices connected. And
they're not it was probably a bit better like a year and a half ago when he bought it, because the price, well, first of all, Zen wasn't really here yet. Mm-hmm. So back then, sure, maybe the price is okay, but now it just kind of feels like, I guess there are instances where an FX processor would make sense. If you're on a really strict budget and you don't really care about absolute max performance, and you don't want, for some reason, an i3, then I guess you could buy one. But that's not really a use case I'm familiar with.
And also if you're pairing it with an equally low-end GPU, because you do start to see the limitations as you put in a higher-end GPU, because it's just not fast enough to keep up with the amount of frames that you'll be able to get, like with the GTX 1080, where you could see here with the 5930K, where it's not being limited at all, it's getting 158 frames because the CPU is fast enough to keep up. Whereas with an 8370, it's the same GPU, but it just can't keep up with the frames that it's trying to dish out, so it can only do 90.
Yeah, CPU's got to do work for every frame.
Exactly. Every frame that's being shown to you has to be dealt with by the CPU after the GPU gives it to it, so that it can be displayed on your screen. And you can see that, and that happens even more so with SLI going between two GPUs, which they tested on Watch Dogs 2. And you could see the difference here going from a 5960X to testing all the way down to the FX 4100, and it just continues to go all the way down as you get lower end on the CPUs, and that's really where you start to see a bigger bottleneck is with SLI, higher end GPUs, and CPU demanding titles certainly, like Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah. Well, it depends too on the lane assignment. Like as you get into those really low end CPUs, the platform might not assign quite as many lanes depending on what they used. But I don't know what they use for their testing. So
Yeah. Do you have anything to add on this, Wendell?
I'm gonna sort of hold my breath and wait and see what happens. I think the general trend around around processor improvements, like Zen, is really exciting, and for the upcoming Kaby Lake stuff, I think all of the performance improvements are going to be around peripherals and I/O and lower latency and being able to shuttle data in and out faster. And I think those are where we're going to see performance gains.
especially with drives, the big limitation with like SATA is kind of needs to go away for SSDs.
Yeah. More
Yes.
PCI lanes. I don't care
Yeah.
about anything but PCI lanes.
Yeah,
That's what everyone needs is more PCI lanes. But like for anyone that's out there though that is on the fence thinking about upgrading, like, oh, should I wait for this? Should I wait for that? I would advise anyone, if you can, to wait for Kaby Lake to come out and wait for Zen to come out and then compare those two and see what you can get best price to performance wise.
Yep.
Yeah,
If you
they're
need something to
pretty
tide you over, a garbage computer will do just fine.
Exactly. There you go. Go get a garbage computer and a high end GPU that you can throw in a system later on. Oh wait, no, you couldn't do the high end GPU with that. Sorry, never mind. It's garbage all the way around. Just wait, or or gauge your expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of Kaby Lake, Asus Z270, they started showing off some of their motherboards. You want to take lead on this, Steve? You were going over this before with me.
Sure, yeah. So Z270 obviously is the new Z series chipset for Kaby Lake, and you can run Kaby Lake CPUs for the most part in Z170 series boards with a BIOS update. But obviously they're not going to sit by and not ship new boards. And they do have a few, some changes to what's supported on the chipset. The main thing I was looking at, because there's a lot of boards here, it's like half a dozen or a bit more maybe. The main one I was looking at was the Maximus 9 Hero.
Yeah, the Maximus 9 Hero. I like the Formula also. Like, these boards are just all around sexy as all hell. Like, I know they got RGB on them, but I'd probably leave it off because they just look great without it. The monochrome design, I need one of these Asus.
They're the high-end boards, so they're a little more interesting. Like, we don't have hard information on it because I think these are technically leaks. But just looking at the photos, obviously the socket area is a bit obscured by the VRM cooling, which I'll talk about in a second. But I think it looks like about a 10-phase design on the Maximus 9, which for Intel CPUs these days is fine. That's more than enough. You don't need that many phases for overclocking these CPUs anymore. Like Gigabyte several years ago pushing boards out with like upwards of almost 30 phases was absolutely absurd and unnecessary. But the interesting thing on this one though is the cooling. Like if you look at it, it's got the EK logo.
That's what I noticed earlier. I was like, is that the EK logo?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yes, that's going to pop up more, I think, this generation. That started coming out in around January of this year. It's basically you've got a copper plate on the FETs and inductors, all that stuff, and it helps cool your heat. Ties into like G quarter-inch fittings for an open loop system or something.
Yeah, you could see the ports on there. You can unscrew, and I assume you could probably use like the EK, like the quick disconnects probably off one of their cooling setups. You can buy the AIOs with the quick disconnect. You could pop those in there, or you can easily do a full-on custom loop and be able to cool your VRMs, which is awesome.
Well, the interesting thing here, I think that's been overlooked, and I really want to test this because we have the means to do it. I just don't have the time or the motherboard. But the interesting thing is a VRM, especially the ones on these boards, easily TJ Max 150C. Like T-case is maybe 125C on a power stage or something, but you're never going to really hit that temperature for the most part, maybe extreme overclockers. So the cool benefit then is not just that the VRMs are cooler, because you're not going to derate that hard at 90C. The cool thing is that it lowers in theory, your case ambient, because instead of these VRMs radiating heat into the socket area, that heat's being conducted up and pushed out a radiator somewhere. So that'll lower your GPU temperature as a result. Maybe you have like a 30C case ambient instead of 40, and you get more boost room. But that was the cool thing I wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah, the water cooling of the VRMs. Has that been done before? You've been able to do that by yourself? I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, you could do it. There's boards
Yeah.
spin out since CES. Yeah.
I've never actually seen one. Why doesn't Jay have one then? He water cools everything. He is my gateway to water cooling. So if he hasn't done it, then it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Jay's done a lot of liquid cooling.
He's even doing Terry Cruz's PC, man. If you want water cooling, you got to call Jay.
That's true.
Do you have
I guess one last item here is the SSDs do have some better cooling too. So like M.2, some of the M.2 SSDs early on, like the Samsung ones, were hitting like upwards of 90 C in really intense load testing. That's not great. So that's being resolved with the Kaby like boards. It looks like.
So I guess the question now is, since they have the water cooled VRMs, how much of a overclocking headroom do you expect to get out of that additional to what we would normally have?
Not a lot for the average user, I think. Maybe
for the liquid nitrogen users.
Yeah, maybe. So. Yeah, if they're not cooling their VRMs with liquid nitrogen, I guess so.
There's just not enough way to deliver that kind of wattage through the socket. I mean, when you're delivering that kind of wattage through the socket, I mean, when you take off the heatsink and you pull the CPU out of the socket and you look at the pads, you will see discoloration on the pads of your CPU pushing that much current through it.
All right. Well, sexy ass motherboards either way from Asus. I want one, and especially if they do an X99 in that same design with the EK and everything. I want it in my life, in my system. I mean, I got the all black PC. This thing would look perfect in there.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, I mean, I guess since we are seeing these, we're probably going to see. Well, we already seen some benchmarks, like we talked about earlier from Tom's Hardware. So, I'm expecting to see Kaby Lake before the end of the year, hopefully. I think it's a possibility. It's kind of late in the year to release them, but I think we'll see it.
I think Intel's missed the boat on Christmas. They're going to wait till after Christmas, I'd say.
You think too late. They would have shipped before Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so close. I mean, when you start seeing stuff like this pop up and the motherboard's leaking, it's not too far behind. But you're right. It could very well be until after Christmas. It's kind of late in the year to start releasing new products. Anyway, all right. So next up, we're going to be talking a little bit about machine learning. I'll let you take this one, Wendell, because you linked me to this story over with Logo Joe, which was pretty darn cool. So I'll let you take this one.
I thought it was interesting because it's a story about machine learning, and you think it's like, they took our jobs, and machine learning is going to take over the universe. And so this is a guy who created an algorithm that comes up with logos, and so he feeds it. He fed a machine learning algorithm some visually appealing artwork and fonts and other things that goes into a logo, and and then fed it a bunch of logos from other companies to learn what people liked or what made a good logo, and then he just sort of let the AI run and built a web interface for it. And so you can sign up for this service and have it generate you a logo, and the acceptance rate is only 0.5%. So for the people that sign up, only 0.5% actually get something that they're willing to pay for. But you can play with it endlessly. So like depending on, it's like, no, I like this one. No, I don't like this one. I like this one. No, I don't like that one. You can keep endlessly tweaking whatever your results are, and so 0.5% of the people are willing to do that and actually get a logo that they're willing to buy, and then they buy it, and it's to the point where that 0.5% is enough for this one person to make $15,000 a month.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I tested that 0.5% earlier, and I would say that's probably accurate because I went on there and I clicked through the things like the logos, it's like, okay, click 5 or more logos in here that you like, and then type in what is the name of your company, which made me feel bad actually because like, what's the name of your company? And I was like, Joker Productions. Like, this name is too long. You should have a shorter name. I was like, oh, is it? Should I shorten that? Should I rename the channel? I was questioning everything now.
Well, there was I don't know. It's probably an urban legend, but there was a story about a very young Google that was like talking to an investor like Warren Buffett or something, and it was like, I don't understand how you're going to make money from advertising, and the concept of the long tail of advertising sort of came up in the meeting with the billionaire investor, and what the long tail of advertising is that. With the internet, instead of advertising like you can buy cars from, Uncle Bob's used car salesman. No, that's not how you advertise on the internet. How you advertise on the internet is, my name is Bob, and I have an emporium of 1974 to 1976 Volvos, and I can get you any part that you want for a Volvo from 1974 to 1976, and water pumps and whatever you might want to do. And so that incredibly narrow, incredibly niche whatever, you can be the best whatever for those obsolete Volvo parts, and that will bring you success on the internet versus I'm Bob's used car sales or whatever.
Right.
And so this is like the long tail of creative pursuits, I guess. And so it's just like machine learning can, you have a client that wants to, do a logo and they want to fiddle with it endlessly. It's like, just let them talk to a computer because they would drive a human being insane. And you can make some money at it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess presumably it learns as it goes, I would think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you don't like this logo. I won't show you more logos like that one.
Right.
Yeah, it's like Terminator 2, basically, when he's learning how to say things.
Yeah.
I mean, this is essentially leading to Skynet, right? I mean, that's kind of ties in what we're talking about with the NVIDIA thing. It's sort of Skynet is kind of taking over, and it's being led by Jensen.
Yeah. Just
Be
wait
cool.
till it spits out a logo. Hasta la vista. Wait, what?
Exactly. And it'll happen that fast too, if we're led to believe what Jensen was saying there. He's already got the evil bad guy jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the bad guy Terminator jacket already.
That jacket has been on a lot of stages. I don't want to know what it smells like at this point.
Yeah, so Steve, you were telling me about this thing with NVIDIA with the Hypermore's law that what Jensen was talking about, which kind of tied in with this with the deep learning, the machine learning. How did this all tie in? And what is, I guess, NVIDIA using machine learning for to advance their interests?
Using it. Yeah, they're using it for a lot of things. They're dumping a ton of investment into machine learning and deep learning. They've been talking about it for a long time too. A couple of years now, NVIDIA's been doing these press conferences and keynotes at GTC, the GP Technology Conference.
Mm-hmm.
So what he was saying in that article, I guess the like non-consumer side is that they're looking at kind of exascale computing pretty soon, which is exascale computing is basically when the system can perform 1 billion calculations per second. Which is like 1,000x what was happening in 2008. So it's accelerating fast. I think NVIDIA was saying, so obviously their metrics here, grain of salt, but I think they were saying a 65x improvement in this specific type of application deep learning over Maxwell with Pascal. And that is, that's largely because of, like, if you look at the GP100 architecture, there's a ton of FP16 in there, and all these mixed floating point, mixed precision compatibility between the new architectures means that for things like deep learning, where you don't care about precision as much because you're just shooting billions of data points at it, it can go a whole lot faster. And then if there's an error, who cares? You've got so many other data points, it doesn't matter. But with gaming, I guess the interesting thing is long term. I'd be curious to see something like Wendell's logo site he found kind of being applied to gaming, where you end up with like AI that studies the player or the player base and learns how to interact with it,
and it kind of adapts the game as you go on.
Yeah, right. Potentially overcome the decades-long problem of AI being either a cheat or too stupid to be fun to play with. So
I would love to see a game that actually learns the player as you play, maybe to make the game more challenging or more appealing to the player based on what they like, or maybe like a horror game with scares.
Yes.
Maybe learn what the player is more scared of over time, and then kind of make the rest of the game kind of
that would
go
just be
along to
mean.
that.
I didn't think about that.
That'd be awesome, though. I mean, you can get one of those new Myonix mice with the heart tracker. And you can plug that into the supercomputer game, and it can just read everything on the cloud, and then just make the game scarier for you. That's the future.
So okay, this is the heart attack limit. We're gonna stay below that.
Yeah, we got to stay right below there. Do you have anything more to add on this, Wendell, with the NVIDIA side of it, with the supercomputing?
No, it gives me an idea though. If your heart rate gets too insane, you guys have all seen the Team Fortress 2 trailer for the Pyro. Like you play it, it gets too intense, it switches into pyro mode, and so it's everything is, do you believe in magic?
That'd be good. All right. So we got a couple more stories here before we get into doing the Q&A. This one is just kind of a laptop that just made me drool here, seeing the i7 7700K in this Clevo laptop with 1080s and SLI. $16,000, but I'm curious what it is without the 1080s and SLI because I really don't need that. I just really need the
It's also got 10
7700K.
terabytes of SSD storage.
Oh, does it have 10 terabytes SSD? That'll
probably
add on
more
to it as well.
expensive,
Yeah, that adds on to it. You can scale that back also. I only need about 2 terabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah, only 2 terabytes would be fine. Yeah, I just want one of these for a mobile workstation for when I travel, so I can edit videos on the road. That'd be my primary function of it. But I'm curious to see how they're going to be able to, keep the temps down because I've got one of the Acer laptops behind me, and that's got one of the HQ processors in there, and that thing gets up to 95 degrees Celsius on Battlefield 1, like instantly.
Yeah.
You just load up a game, it's like 95 Celsius. How's it going?
You basically end up blasting the fan profile, I guess. That's what we do with our render laptops on the road. They have kind of the freak out point where it trips the fan curve to suddenly be 100% and you can't hear each other type of thing. I don't know. I think this laptop is mostly so expensive because is it even out? Isn't it like a leak on eBay or something?
Yeah, this was a leak.
Yeah. So I mean, I would imagine the fact that it's not available probably drives up price a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I would not pay $16,000 for any laptop.
Yeah, even for what's in there, that seems a little high, just a little.
Yeah, a bit high. I think you could build like 4 equivalent desktops.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you couldn't throw that in your book bag and go travel with it.
That's true. Yeah, I guess.
Like having this much horsepower in a laptop does serve a purpose, but I still wouldn't. I mean, there are people out there that would, with more money than sense, that would foolishly go out there and buy one of these as their primary gaming system and just don't do that. You're a bad example to the rest of the PC community, so stop it.
There's use cases with like those. There's the dual GPU, CyberPower and MSI, whatever it is, Titan laptops. Those are, for the fact that it's 2 power adapters does make it a little rough to really do much with. But I guess the use case is like, maybe you have 2 places you live or a place where you live and where you work. You spend a lot of time at both. Maybe it makes sense to haul it around. I don't know, but I'm not one of those users, I think.
Yeah, I feel like the one I have behind me now, the Acer 17-inch, is just already just way too big.
Yeah.
Way too big. But yeah, for those types of purposes, though, it's still better than carrying around a PC. I mean, when I went to the land back in April, I carried up my PC. I shipped a monitor cross country and back. I was just like, I really wish I had a laptop.
Right.
Or Wendell's PC.
I still have my Lee and Lee. Yeah. I
Yeah.
did that thing with like X99 and a 1,000-watt power supply. Some of those 4 terabyte Samsung SSDs. That'd be nice.
Have you seen that PC, Steve?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so tell them what you got in it, Wendell.
It's a Lee and Lee case, but you remember the stand up Lee and Lee case with like the square.
Yes.
Okay, so I ripped out the window and replaced the window with an iPad Retina screen, and I put it on an articulating arm. So the screen retracts inside the case, but you can grab a hold of the screen and you can pull it up to your face. And so but it's a really great travel machine because you can carry it around by the top and then just set it on the desk, and then you can pull the screen up to your face. And because you pull the screen up to your face, you can run it at native resolution. So you've got, even though it's only a 9-inch screen,
right,
you run it at the full 2048 by 1536, and you can run it at full resolution because it's only like that far from your face. It works great.
Yeah, there's like at Computex I saw did you go to the Silverstone booth during the show? They had one. They had a system they were really happy to show. There's like a VR case. It basically just had a screen bolted to the side panel.
Yeah.
Like I guess you could use that as a laptop replacement. I don't know.
I haven't seen a use for having SLI though in a laptop. I think that's just pushing it a bit too much.
Well, even CUDA accelerated production stuff doesn't really use it properly.
Yeah,
at least not all the stuff we use. So.
No,
I'd rather use that space for more cooling.
The proxy workflow thing. I was talking to somebody about editing in Premiere and blah blah blah. I'm learning, but I'm not really there yet. Right. And there's a guy that I know, and he's got a Surface Book, and which is not really that great. and he does the proxy editing workflow with Premiere, and he does 4K rendering, 4K footage on a Surface Book, and it's not a completely excruciating experience because of the proxy workflow. And it's like, wow,
Right.
really? I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it takes like an hour to render a 15-minute video, but
It's not bad though for 4K.
for 4K, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's something about the he was showing me the ingest workflow. When you ingest it, he's using the Avid codecs. So like you go to the Avid's website and you download like HDX as the codec, and you use that as your proxy ingest workflow in Premiere, and it runs like greased lightning even on shitty computers or portable computers.
I still need to learn how to do that. Like we're kind of trying to figure out how to deal with the data issue where you dump like 20 gigabytes of B-roll for every product or whatever. So I know you can have like an intermediary codec or format that everything off the SD card gets pushed through it, and you end up with fairly lossless compression too.
Yeah, I was just looking at that earlier today, so I don't know either, but I'm going to dig into that because that seems like the ideal workflow.
Yeah, Linus has a few videos.
Yeah, that's what I was going to. Yeah, so I was going to just say Linus did it, or Brendan I think did it. I'm not sure, or maybe it was Edsel. I think it might have been Edsel.
Yeah,
it's Edsel's workflow. And I know Dimitri had adopted it as well at one point. I'm not sure if he's still using it, but yeah, it seemed to work pretty well. I know one of my friends, Brian over at Bad Seed Tech, he was using the red encoder, which helped a lot with the file sizes when using the G7 at 4K. I don't really have that much issues using it though. I usually just transfer everything off my SD card onto my hard drive, onto an SSD while I'm working, and then when I'm done, I just store it to a mechanical drive.
Yeah, as long as you're editing in 1080p, there's a lot of good options out there. I mean, even like DaVinci Resolve, and there's some really good options for Linux. But then 4K, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, I just on my work file properties on Vegas, I set it to 1080p, but then when I'm done, I just render it in 4K, and it's just fine, because it's just like that work. It's like it sees it at 1080, so it works like it's 1080, even though it's 4K footage.
Yeah, there's some trickery you can do too with the way YouTube works, and I don't fully understand that yet either. But I know like it'll render at a higher bit rate if you push a 4K file, but you can do some kind of like downscaling or something so you don't actually have to shoot in true 4K. I'm not sure how it works yet, but looks promising.
Basically, what it is, if you shoot in 1080 and you and then you work with the file and you render it out in 4K, YouTube is going to see it as 4K, so they're going to give you the higher bit rate, which will make it look closer to your native 1080p video, which if you uploaded it in 1080, it really wouldn't, because it would be really like shitty bit rate.
Yeah.
So it'd be about 3,500 to 6,000 bit rate versus like the, what was it before when I showed you? Because you could do live streaming on 4K.
It was the one you showed me.
It was up to like 30,000.
It was 13 to 30 megabits per second, so 30,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so up to 30 megabit per second. So that's what I do. My 4K videos, when I render them out, I do them in a little bit over that. So I could probably scale that down now that I know the actual number.
Right.
I'm adding extra render time for no reason.
And space.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The file is off the G7 aren't too bad. I know with other cameras, it definitely is. Like if you're out there shooting with like an Ursa Mini or something, you're going to have much bigger files because of the codecs they use. But with the G7, it's absolutely fine. What camera do you guys use, Steve?
Canon XA20.
Oh, yeah. You got like one of the serious cameras.
Yeah, it's semi-serious. It was like a couple grand when I got it, but we need to upgrade. The only problem is at the range we are now, to upgrade, it doesn't make sense to go spend like $3,000 or $4,000 because it's not going to be that much better than what we have. Yeah. So the next step is unfortunately going to be really expensive, and I'm pushing it off as long as possible.
Yeah, I've been saving up for the A7S too. I've been trying to get one in January. I think it wasn't planned, but the last 2 Januaries I've made upgrades to my camera gear. So maybe this January. Because those things just basically shoot at night. I was in a Best Buy and they had one and I was testing it out in there and I was just like, man, it looks like I have studio lighting in here right now in your store.
Yeah. Our solution has been to strap a $400 light on top of the camera for when we're shooting conventions. I have a $10 light from Neewer. It works pretty good. Yeah, portable lights solve a lot of the issue. I'd rather spend less on those and use like a pretty damn good camera than spend a lot on a camera You know, and it's the unfortunate, I guess, one side effect is if you're interviewing someone who's not used to being on camera, you have to be like, I really apologize for what your eyes are about to go through.
Why do you think I wear sunglasses on the floor at PAX when I'm interviewing people?
Yeah.
I took those out at one point. I was interviewing one guy and I put my sunglasses on. He's like, "Do I get a pair?" I was just like, "No, no, you don't." And then everyone in the comments is like, "Why is he wearing sunglasses indoors? Like, have you ever stared into an LED?"
Those 8-bit glasses, carry those around to hand out for people.
There you go. I'll have to carry around a whole bag of them for people when I'm interviewing at the events. I don't know, I try to keep it pretty lightweight and portable because it's much different. I think when you're covering, I did PAX completely by myself. Like I'm the cameraman and everything, like doing all of that stuff. So it's a lot harder, I think, doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I try to keep everything down. It's like one compact system on a monopod. It's challenging, but it's fun.
Yeah, I remember those days. I'm glad to. I have someone. We've got 2 people who do camera work for me, so it's much easier to just kind of like let them focus on that because too many things to screw up otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. At some point in the future, I will hire a cameraman for events. I'll definitely do that eventually. All right, so our last topic is an absolutely ridiculous graphics card from Colorful. I don't know.
Why it exists?
Yeah, I was talking before. I mean, all right, so it's a water-cooled graphics card, which is like, all right, it takes up 4 slots, which is that's bigger than the Asus cards that they used to do. Those were triple slot, which I thought was like as big as they could get. This thing though is it's insane. I don't know why it exists. And I was also really confused. You and I were trying to figure out earlier, Steve, is like, why is the water block on the bottom of the PCB? How is that cooling the GPU?
Yeah, well, they didn't. No one has a photo. At least I didn't see one of the actual backside of this thing. So I don't know if that's like a reservoir or a block or what.
Well, you could kind of see that. You could kind of look like you could see 2 channels going through it, where the water would go through. It kind of reminds me of like the EK blocks a little bit. You can have those 2 channels.
Yeah, and that would make it look like a block. There's also like, I don't know. It's first of all, they put an absurd amount of metal on this thing that takes up 3 slots, and 3 fans. That alone would be fine. Like so, liquid. Like I guess maybe if you're running something like the FTWs we just tested, where the backplate gets like 110 C or something. I guess you could dissipate that heat, but it doesn't matter because PCB doesn't care. It's just like copper and fiberglass.
There you go, EVJ. There's your solution right there.
Yeah, like until you're hitting like the melting point of copper or something, then it's a concern. But that's never going to happen unless your FET explodes or something. But I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know why it exists. We don't know how much money it is either, do we?
No. And then the other point that both of us raised earlier too was the weight capacity on a PCI slot. We neither of us could come up with. Maybe do you have any idea, Wendell, the maximum weight load for a PCI slot, which I can't believe we're actually talking about?
That is actually specified in the PCI SIG. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it is actually part of the specification.
Is it? Okay.
And yeah. I mean, and I'm sure this card definitely exceeds it. But a lot of boards have been coming with the metal reinforced PCI Express slots anyway.
That's what I said to Steve. I was like, they knew about this card. They were preparing.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see many, many more of these in the future.
I hope not.
I certainly hope not either.
We'll
try doing SLI with that.
We'll finally see a return to horizontal orientation motherboards, which I, for one, have always been a fan of.
Oh yeah, way easier to work with too. Yeah, it's like, the silly thing. So like, even if you're cooling the power design that much better, and you're cooling the GPU, Pascal is only going to overclock so high. So there's like this article says 1936 megahertz for the, I don't know if it's base or boost, basically the advertised clock. That's not that impressive. And you're not going to get much higher than that, than 2100, maybe 2200 megahertz. So I'm very curious about this card. We probably won't get one because of what I've been saying about it. But
don't worry, no one watches this show.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's like it's just kind of silly, I guess.
Yeah, I can't imagine buying one. If you want to send me one, I'll sacrifice a motherboard for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, please post photos of like just keep a GoPro pointed at the computer so you can see when it rips the socket out of the board.
I've known people that have ripped out their PCI sockets with like a graphics card that got stuck, and they just pulled on it, and just the socket got ripped right out of the board. It's like no, just don't do that. Yeah, that seems like a very realistic possibility. You're just going to be gaming, and all of a sudden you're just going to hear a thud and a blue screen. Do-do-dum, 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 do-do-dum. Is it connected? I can't tell.
I saw one time somebody had shipped a computer, and it broke the end. Like the slot wasn't broken apart like a sandwich like you would normally expect. The card had slid vertically in the slot. And so it was exactly one pin off. It destroyed their machine. Because it literally broke out the end of the PCI Express slot and the little dividers in the middle. And you look at it and you wouldn't think anything was wrong. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. The little metal bracket from the slot is kind of bent a little. And it was exactly one pin off.
Oh, man. Yeah, shipping's bad. That's why like those SIs, when they ship systems, there's this really cool foam they use sometimes. Like, have you seen it, Wendell? With so if you go to iWebPower or CyberPower, they have this sort of blue foam, and I don't know if it's like you pull a tab or something, basically expose it to air, and it just expands like a balloon, and it fills like the entire internal, and then the customer just pulls it out when they're ready to use it.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Really sweet, yeah.
Yeah, I've shipped whole PCs. I didn't have anything that simple. I was lining the back of the PCBs with like cardboard, and then putting in like hard foam that I had got, or the soft foam that I had got out of like power supply boxes and stuff, and just cutting it to size, like make sure everything was okay in there.
I almost always just pull the GPUs and just ship it without a GPU, or ship the GPU separately or something.
Right.
All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get into the Q&A now. I'd already told people in chat so we can get a few initial questions in here, but if you missed that, go ahead and post your questions now. If you want to address them to anyone specifically, to Steve, Wendell, or myself, you could do that. The first one I saw in here is Last Panther, one of our mods. Thanks to all of our mods also, by the way, doing a great job this week. Last Panther said, what are your thoughts on the A7R2 versus the A7S2 Joker? I had a chance to try out both of them in the store, and I can't really sit here and cite off all of the benefits, pros and cons of either one, but my understanding is that if your focus is video, get the S2. If your focus is still images, get the R2. That's my understanding of basically the two heads up between each other, but I can't tell you the specifics of either one right now because I'm not knowledgeable enough on them. I will be once I have the money to buy one, though.
Yeah.
As soon as I've got the $3 to $4 grand to invest in that and the lens I need for it, then I will definitely be able to answer that question.
Oh, it's probably more like 5 by the time you get all the stuff that you need.
Probably, yeah. You're right.
It's nice to tell yourself 3 or 4 though. We
yeah.
We did the same. I lived in the same like delusional playland too when we were like gonna upgrade our camera equipment.
You're like, how the batteries cost how much?
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll buy the Chinese knockoff ones then and hope that nothing goes horribly wrong.
Yeah. I remember the first Canon DSLR I got and the warning that came on those batteries. It's like this is BS. They just want you to buy their $40 batteries.
It's and so I looked at I had to get a new camera recently because I needed a camera, and it was like A7S2 is full frame. It's great in low light. It's really, but I couldn't get past. There was a couple of things. One, I would have to get new lenses. I already had 2 Rokinon Micro Four Thirds lenses, but low f-stop, blah blah blah. Low f-stop lenses are so much more expensive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Than getting a speed booster and using that with like a full frame. Like the Rokinon lenses are quote unquote full frame, some of them, but not really. But then you use a speed booster and you get an extra f-stop, and it's like holy crap. But the in-body stabilization for the A7S2 was mind-blowing because you could be there with the camera like this, and it was insane. And it's like, okay, in-body stabilization is really cool. But then Panasonic came out with the G85, which has in-body stabilization, and I can use in-body stabilization with the Rokinon lenses, and it's really good, like really good. And that camera was only $1,000 with the kit lens. It's Micro Four Thirds 4K, only 4K 30 hertz. I think the A7S2 is 4K 60 hertz. I think that's true. and the G85 also supports a battery grip, because the A7S II, I thought the battery life was pretty awful for what it was for run and gun. It was just just with the batteries. So
Yeah, you
it's
gotta
like,
get one of those dual battery grips for it.
yeah, it's like I really want to like it, and the low light performance is amazing, but I get an extra f-stop with a speed booster, and I can use lenses like the Sigma 18 to 35. So I got the G85 because it was so much cheaper.
Yeah, that's the only thing I don't like about my G7 is that the fact that it's micro four thirds, so it's effectively getting half the light you would get in a full frame. So I always have to shoot in like double the ISO that I would on a full frame.
Get a speed booster and some APS-C lenses, and you get the extra f-stop back.
Well, that's what I had toyed around with when I first got the camera. I had the camera. I was like, okay, I can get native lenses, which is what I ended up doing, or I could go and get the speed booster and the Sigma lens that every YouTuber on the planet uses. And I chose to stick with native, and it's a good lens. Don't get me wrong, but I just always have to shoot at a higher ISO. So that's kind of why I'm like, I just want an S2.
I really like the.
I just want full frame.
Yeah, I like the prosumer cameras too much. Like dedicated cameras. We have DSLR for photos, and unless it makes sense, I'm gonna stick with just like strictly one job for each device, which is really just like that. It's partly a staffing thing. Like if I hand someone a camera at CES, I want to make sure they know how to use it. So kind of give everyone one job and not mix and match. And I have the same philosophy with devices. I do really like the XA20. It's awful in low light unless you get the on-camera lights, which in that case it's no longer low light. So that's been my solution.
Let's see, what else do we have in here? Someone asked Wendell, how is Fedora 25?
Fedora 25 is awesome. I've got Fedora 25 with the AMD GPU driver and RPM Fusion, and it's really good. It's exactly the right balance of work and play, because Fedora, I mean, but I do work I do work on Linux, and so yeah, it's not as bleeding edge as like Arch, but it's really stable and it's really easy to sort of do what I want. There's not quite as much stuff. There's not quite as much stuff that you get on from like Arch's AUR repository. It's Copers or COPR, and there are some things available, but it doesn't really work the same. But overall, Fedora 25, it's been really stable. It's been really fast. It's Wayland by default. I run GNOME. It's pretty great.
Someone wanted to know if any of us have scientific degrees, because he's always impressed with our careful methodology.
I have a computer science degree.
There you go. Wendell's got a computer science degree. What about you, Steve?
No, my background is basically test engineering for Dell, and then after that, I took that experience and applied it here. So it's all hands-on.
Yeah, I basically just have high school. I did 2 years of college where I studied film, and then just kind of kicked around and did a bunch of retail and construction jobs, and then Googled everything else. I have a degree in Googling and watching other tech YouTubers.
You get pretty damn far with Googling.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I tell people. It's like I am a very good Googler. Believe it, I think that should be a skill. Like there is skilled Googling.
Master Googler. That sounds really like it. That's a business card from like 1947. They're gonna run you out of town.
Well, hey, I was just playing Watch Dogs 2, and at the beginning you have to pick like one of the pre-made creative characters, and they have their occupations, and one of them was drinks only water. I think Googler is just a step above that. Is there a Zen chip that's meant to take on the quad-core i7s? All I've heard people talk about are the multi-core X99 competitors. So that would likely be the S5 that we were talking about earlier, the S3, S5, S7, which are ranging from about $200 to $300 in the rumors that we've seen.
Yeah.
The S5 though, I think that's still supposed to be an 8-core part, right? It's just going to be a lower bin part.
I think
right,
so.
Steve? Yeah.
I, as far as we understand it right now.
Yeah, from the rumors, that's what the rumors are saying.
But also the core architecture is not the same between Intel and AMD, so it's not necessarily that straightforward. But I think that's what it's supposed to be, though, just based on what we saw.
Yeah. Uh, what is the best low lag 4K Korean monitor 40-inch ish right now? I'll leave that to Wendell.
Oh God, that's such a tough choice. Okay, so it's not the 32-inch monitor that I put out today is probably the best for gaming. It's 32 inches. It's an AH-VA. That's advanced hyper viewing angle, not vertical alignment, because people have gotten confused about that. But it's an IPS type panel, so it has the problems that quote unquote problems that IPS has. But it's a later generation IPS panel, so the response time is quite good on it. It is FreeSync compatible, but it has problems going much over 63 hertz. So your FreeSync range is not great. It's like 58 to 63, 50. It advertises itself as like 43 to like 68 or something. But in playing Tomb Raider at 4K, which is a 38 to 60 FPS ordeal on the Fury that I was playing on, I didn't notice anything weird happening, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a screen tear here and there. Watching the windmill demo and running through the actual testing, it looked like the range was that. But in terms of like image quality and like how good the panel is and that kind of thing, that's the best and most recent one that I've tried. I still really like the microboard monitors in general. They're pretty good. There's different kinds of panels. The 40-inch panels are more like vertical alignment panels, and so their response time is kind of slow. It's an earlier generation process. It's not really like super amazing, but 40-inch monitors like for productivity are amazing. But 32 inches, I mean, if your eyes get used to it, if you're okay with the pixel density on a 27-inch monitor, 1440p, you're probably going to be okay with the pixel density on a 32-inch 4K. But you might have to sit 2 or 3 inches closer to the monitor to make everything apparently the same size.
Someone wants to know how Watch Dogs 2 is so far. I am enjoying it. Surprisingly more than I thought I would, actually. A lot of the tasks in the game, like the side missions, even the main missions kind of all just feel like side missions. I put like 5 hours into the game, and I really don't feel like anything I've done so far is going towards like a major narrative. It just kind of feels like I'm running around doing things. But I'm enjoying those things. They're fun to do, and it's a nice world to drive around in. So if you are the type of person that just likes open world games so you can have stuff to do and clear objectives off of a map, then it's a Ubisoft game. It's what you'd expect.
Yeah, I've got I think technically the Steam profile says we have like 20 hours in it.
That's benchmarking.
It's literally the same like 100-yard stretch of the game over and over, 20 hours. I have not explored beyond the headquarters.
And someone asked, Wendell, do you think we'll see more jobs sliding towards machine learning in the coming years?
That's a good question.
Well, so okay, if we take the logo thing that was happening earlier and you look at that and it's like, oh my God, the creative jobs are gonna go away. No. Imagine creative types having access to like Adobe, I don't know, whatever, Adobe logo smorgasbord. And the creatives sit down and they feed it all the parameters from the client and they deal with all the bullshit from the client. And then Adobe smorgasbord, comes up with several thousand ideas that then the creative is like, no, this is good, this is bad. And you end up at a spot where the neural net that's in this program is sort of learning how to think like the artist or the designer that's doing it. And so imagine if you had like Picasso that had a sounding board counterpart in Photoshop to do the same kind of painting, the same kind of thing. And so it's like, I don't know that you would really supplant Picasso's ability. I think that it would mean that, Picasso, instead of having, a few dozen or, 100 sponsored works over his lifetime, he might have 10,000 sponsored works where, the Rockefellers can have the, $1 million painting, and the people that are, not the Rockefellers can get something that's kind of sort of like a Rockefeller, or that's kind of sort of like a Picasso, but he might have just looked at it for 20 minutes as opposed to spending 6 months on it or whatever.
Right.
And so I think even looking at this worst case scenario with machine learning, I think it's still the case that it's not necessarily eliminating jobs. It's still sort of changing what they are.
Someone wants to know, Wendell, what is your opinion on Templeos? I don't know what that is.
Temple OS?
Oh, Temple OS. Okay.
That's the one where the guy keeps trying to write. I think if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's the one where the guy thinks that the operating system will somehow let him boot into God or something. I don't know.
That's a pretty fun question, actually. Someone wants to know, our three biggest tech hardware fails. I think instead of me taking all three, I think we should all take one. Let's see how.
I have to think about that for a second.
I think actually my biggest tech fail really wasn't that big of a fail, honestly. I was actually, he said Salvador Studio is actually pretty similar to his, where I had built my brother's PC where we had used custom cables on the power supply, and then I had to hook up a hard drive on there, and I couldn't find the cables that had come with it, so I just grabbed a custom cable from a different power supply that worked, and I just hooked it up to that, and then it just didn't read the hard drive. And then I plugged it into another PC, and it didn't read the hard drive, and I was just like, "What the hell is going on here?" And then I was just like, you know what? I probably fried that hard drive. So yeah, that was a 4 terabyte HGST drive, which are my favorite mechanical drives. So I wasn't happy about it. Yes, that is my gold standard of mechanical drives. So I was not pleased that I had destroyed that NAS drive, but it was a learning lesson, and I was glad it wasn't as expensive as Greg's lesson. What about you guys? Anything like that or worse?
I don't think I can compete with that.
Just frying a hard drive? That's the biggest. That's worse than what you did. Jeez, I feel bad now.
I'm positive there's something I've done. The only one that comes to mind immediately is we were filming had a sponsored motherboard for a video once, and I was talking to the guy working with me, Patrick, and we were like, we should probably ground ourselves for this. We're gonna be standing here on carpet for a couple hours working through the script and everything, and we're like, no, the wrist strap will look stupid on camera, so we didn't ground ourselves, and handled the motherboard for like an hour, explaining all the parts on it, VRM and everything, and the motherboard died from latent ESD, which is basically like, you turn it on, it's like, oh, okay, it survived, cool, and it just dies a couple minutes later, or seconds later, or whatever. So,
I thought I did that to my Glorious build, honestly, because like doing all the painting and stuff, like the first time I booted it, like it booted, and then I was like, oh wait, I need to do something, and I turned it off, and then it just would not turn back on, and I just didn't know why, and it ended up being the RGB controller. It wouldn't work with the RGB controller plugged in for whatever reason. It just wouldn't work. As soon as I ripped it out, it worked.
Here's a good one. Someone just reminded me of. There's a decent one where I had an FX 9000 series processor, and I don't think we ever talked about this. If you've ever worked with AMD sockets and like the stock thermal paste that they provide on some of their coolers, it's like glue. And so when you go to pull that cooler out, if you're not really gentle with it, it'll rip the processor out of the socket and just like be stuck on the bottom of the cooler. So that happened to me once, and it ripped a pin out of the CPU, which we were able to take with tweezers, stick it down into the socket hole, and it actually worked.
Oh, that's funny. The first Pentium computer that I ever had, I fished out of a dumpster, and the computer was like half submerged underwater, but it hadn't been there very long. And when I opened it up, and I very carefully removed the CPU from the socket because I was trying to dry it out, and it's like save the thing, and literally 2 pins on the CPU broke off, and it was just like, no. But I very carefully cleaned it with alcohol anyway, and I put it all back together, and holy shit, it still worked. I used that computer forever, and that was pretty good. That was a win though. I got a laptop. It was the first laptop I ever had. I had it for about a week, and it was like, I need a case for this, and it was exactly the same size as a fabric, like a fabric folio fabric 3-ring binder that would zip shut. And I was like, oh, this is perfect because the laptop will fit in here, and I could just use this as a case, and I don't have to buy a case because I was dirt poor. And it was the first laptop that I ever had, and it was like, yes. And so I pulled the rings out of the 3-ring binder and just sort of reworked the binder with its zipper to be a laptop case, and used Velcro on the laptop, and so I could zip it up and then I could unzip it. And so I was like, yeah, my laptop is protected. And so I used it for like a week like that, and it was great. And then it just mysteriously stopped working, and I was like, that's weird. And there was a docking connector in the back of the laptop, and I got to looking at it, and there was a staple that had just been hanging out in the thing, and the staple somehow got into the docking connector and just destroyed the laptop. And it was just
no.
I didn't have another laptop for like 2 years.
That's such a lame way to go, too.
Yeah.
Just a short circuit or something.
Someone had asked about the X34, the Acer X34, if it's still the best ultra-wide monitor out there. I would say for gaming, probably yes, if you want G-Sync. But for non-gaming needs, if you just want ultra-wide for desktop and production, if you're doing like video editing, photo work, anything like that, there's an LG. I don't know the model name off the top of my head, but it's a little bit better for color accuracy versus that. But the X34 is probably pretty much the bee's knees for gaming ultra-wide monitors you can get right now.
Yeah, I'm staring at one right now. It's good. But again, it's like, what are they, like $1,100, $1,300?
They were $1,300 when they came out. I'm not sure what. I think it's still about the same.
Yeah.
I've still got my $600 Korean one that's FreeSync and completely fine.
Yeah, but how's the ghosting and input lag? Because like I've got my Korean here, and it's good for just having stuff on it that I leave there, but I wouldn't want to use it all the time for gaming and stuff.
It's the same panel. So the ultra
as the
wide,
LG or the X34?
As the LG.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty good in terms of like latency, input lag, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the same one's in the Predator. There's a new one from Microboard that's like the 340 CLZ, and I think that one is the same panel as the X34. And but it's FreeSync instead of G-Sync, and it's only 120 hertz instead of 144, but it's the same panel.
Drake Owens wants to know if you game, Wendell. I can. He does game. I've seen him game on the Beer Games Beer channel.
Yeah, some, not really, poorly. About half the time when I'm gaming is to test something, but
yeah.
I got Civ 6. Civ 6 is a crazy amount of fun, super addictive, hard to put down.
Yeah, what games have you guys been playing recently? I guess Civ 6 for you, Wendell? Is that what you've been playing recently, mostly?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, what about you, Steve? What have you been playing?
Normally my answer would be none, but I actually managed to. I've been forcing myself to play an hour at least of games a week, just to stay current. And that's not because I don't like games. Everyone's like, all of us here, I think, are really busy working on games all day. But Galciv, Galactic Civilizations 3, I've been playing that again. So it's 4X game. It's crazy though, with the huge maps with like 16 or 24 AI on it. Thing eats 16 gigabytes of memory. It's absurd.
Yeah, for me, still Battlefield 1. I played that when I was on vacation on the laptop that I had with me. I played that a fair bit, and now that I got back, I've been playing Watch Dogs 2, which I didn't expect to play. I thought I would do a performance video and then get a refund, but I'm still playing it. I did that with Dishonored 2 and Titanfall 2. Did my performance video. All right, refund. Give back my $60, please. I love refunds. Thank you, Steam.
Indie games that I've been sucked into that are just a crazy amount of fun, Stellaris and Factorio. I really can't say enough good things about those. In Factorio, it's like you are an astronaut stranded on a planet, but you've got all your advanced automation technology. So you literally build an entire automated factory. It's crazy amount of fun. And Stellaris, you're an interstellar civilization, and you explore the galaxy and colonize stars, and you mine for stuff in planets, and you have there's a mod.
Stellaris is awesome.
Have you played the mod that gives you the starships from Star Trek? Because that is the most amazing. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, here's my Galaxy class fleet. It's like, oh, here's a Wing of Yamato class whatever, and it's just like, this is amazing.
I need to do that.
All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and wind down the show here and get on out of here. But before we do, make sure you guys check out, once again, down in the description. Wendell's actually giving away a garbage PC. It's sitting next to him still if you weren't here at the beginning of the show.
Be sure to subscribe to my new channel, guys.
Yeah, and subscribe to his channel. Links to his channel is also below, and Steve's. And after the show's over, I'll update the description with the Level 1 Tech forums also, which you can usually find me over on there in the lounge. It's still called the lounge, right?
Yep.
They haven't changed it? All right, good.
Nice.
Lounge for life. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for watching, and Steve and Wendell for joining us. All of our moderators in chat. Yeah, I appreciate it. No problem.
Yeah, thanks for
hosting. You guys are welcome here anytime. I think we saw a couple times in chat people were saying you guys need to be here permanently, but everyone's got their own things going on. It's not. It would be amazing, but it's just not possible.
Places to go, people to replace with computers.
Exactly. with garbage PCs that you could buy for $25.
I'm going to replace you with a very low-end i5 if you cross me again.
Hey, well, you could probably use the Google server to replace me since I just Google things anyway. All right, thanks again, guys, for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button down below if you enjoyed the show, and catch you guys next week. Ta-da.